Hey guys, it's Pikachu. Today I'm really excited to bring you a full, in-depth Lindis guide for the new patch. I want you guys to all try this new version of Lindis, and with this guide, there's no excuse not to do it. The Blitzblade change and the change of Lindis' ultimate into a dash had even better effects than I had anticipated. And I can safely say that Lindis is now a top-tier champion in Arena of Valor, if not the premier marksman jungle. That being said, this is an in-depth guide to completely explain the hero in and out in this patch, so if you don't want to stay for the full video, feel free to take a look just at the screenshots that I've made completely from scratch. However, if you decide to just take the screenshots, please make sure to leave a like and a comment and a subscription if you choose to do that, as it really means a lot to me and I did spend a long time creating these screenshots from scratch. Guys, really though, this hero is super fast and heavily skirmish oriented, which makes this hero even more action-packed and fun. So, without further ado, let's get this guide started. So, Lindis' passive is that each time you enter a bush, you increase your movement speed by 30% for 2.5 seconds, and you shoot 2 auto attacks on your next auto attack instead of 1. The actual damage dealt is around 130% and not double, but the third attack following the initial 2 hits will trigger the S1 passive, which we will now talk about. Lindis' S1 is an active and passive ability. The active portion grants you vision of a surrounding area for 5 whole seconds, which is super useful when it comes to roaming and not having to face check bushes. This ability can be stored up to 2 times with a 5-second base cooldown. The passive section of this S1 is that every 3 auto attacks on the same enemy, it will deal an additional amount of physical damage. This means that there are quite big benefits towards hitting the same enemies over and over. Now, moving on to Lindis' S2, it is a circular trap that lasts for 2 minutes, slows the enemy movement by 30% if they step on it, and reveal their location. Like a detonating bomb, after a short while, the trap will explode and deal a medium amount of damage. These traps can be stored up to 2 times and become invisible to enemies after 2 seconds after you set it. However, you can only have up to 2 traps on the field at a time. You can use these traps in a variety of ways. The most deadly way is to cut off your enemy's escape. For example, throwing them behind the path of an enemy, and thus when they step on it, they'll slow down, allowing you to chase them down and kill them. You can also use the same logic to slow down your enemy pursuers while you're running away by placing it behind you as you run. This is a great way to check a bush if your S1 is on cooldown. Lastly and most importantly, Lindis received a change in her ultimate. Her ultimate is now a medium range dash that fires 1 stack of an auto attack called the Phantom Mark. The dash has a quick travel speed and an animation cast time. This is an important point because it allows Lindis to dodge key abilities such as the Irie ultimate. Also, Lindis can use it to reposition in a fight or gap close while chasing enemies. Lindis' ultimate now has stacks. You can gain stacks either by triggering the Piercing Glaze passive or by killing a minion. As a reminder, the Piercing Gaze passive effect is repeatedly activated upon hitting the same minion or hero every 3 times. Each minion kill, no matter the red buff or a regular lane minion, is 1 stack, but you have to land the finishing blow. Each time you successfully gain a stack, you also reduce your ultimate cooldown by 1 second. You can gain up to 3 stacks, and each stack represents how many of these auto attacks are released when you dash, up to 4 times. The damage output is reduced by 50% if stacks hit the same target, which they usually would due to low HP targeting, and don't work with normal auto attack effects such as Fafnir's Talon. But the good news is they can trigger Blitzblade passive, and all the stacks can crit. Because of this, a fully stacked ultimate can easily deal 30 to 50% damage to a squishy depending on the amount of crits. Now, let's move on to the leveling guide. So this is a leveling guide that I made from scratch, indicating what I think you should do to add the levels as you advance in the game. So because the Lindis trap explodes and you can place 2 at a time, these traps become an effective tool for clearing the jungle and minion waves. You'll see this particularly in effect in the gameplays later, so that's why you start your S2 first. In fact, when you clear your first jungle buff, you actually place 2 traps, oftentimes making an inappropriate shape with the 2 circles for the most efficient jungle clear. Then, you level your S1 over your S2 for the rest of the game because each upgrade of S1 increases the passive damage effect of your S1. Level up your ultimate whenever you can. So that concludes the leveling guide, so feel free to take a closer look at this chart, and you can also feel free to save it to your device. But if you do reshare it, please make sure to give me credit at Pikachu AOV on YouTube. So this screenshot that I've made here is my recommended builds for the following 3 situations. 1. A standard jungle build. 2. A standard laning build. And 3. A build against tanks and heroes that have a lot of regen. Before we get started, I wanted to let you guys know that I actually go in and mathematically calculate the damage calculations for each hero if they were to build certain items, and I combine that with my game knowledge to make the best possible build. Therefore, the builds that I recommend aren't based on a feeling or a hunch, but actually they're based in mathematical calculations with actual data about the item as well as the hero. However, it's also important to note that don't be confused about data versus mechanics. So just because someone is highly skilled, it doesn't mean that they're using the best and most optimized build for the hero. By contrast, if someone is using the best possible build but don't know how to use the hero properly, then they will probably end up feeding, and that's not really a representation of the effects of the build. These builds are what I truly believe to be the most effective builds, and this time I'll dive a little deeper so we can develop a sense of trust, and you guys can always rely on me for providing you with unique advantages in the game, like with a superior build. So, the core items for Lindis that should not be changed nor altered in its sequence is the 750 gold attack speed jungle item that builds into Scorching Wind, then Finisher Gilded Greaves, then Scorching Wind, then Claves, and finally Blitzblade. Once you complete these 3 items, you'll notice that you hit a huge power spike in the game. The extra crit damage synergizes so well with Blitzblade and the Lindis ultimate, allowing you to have massive magic damage crits along her Phantom Mark stacks, allowing you to deal ridiculous damage in one ultimate dash depending on how many crits you get. From there, the 5th item boils down to personal preference surrounding Lindis' main weakness. She's super squishy, gets easily chunked out during fights, and becomes really vulnerable fighting within lanes, especially in the mid lane. Therefore, if you care about 1v1 potential and survivability, go Bow of Slaughter next. Also, Bow of Slaughter gives 15% critical damage, so it synergizes even better with Blitzblade and the Lindis ultimate. If Bow of Slaughter feels too expensive in-game and you're already behind and just want to finish an item, then build the Beast. If you have a competent team and you want to maximize your damage, then go Fenrir's because it also has fantastic synergy with the Lindis ultimate, literally allowing Lindis to one-shot a 40% health squishy target as all the passive effects combine. Also, an important note is that Omniarms is not on a priority list for Lindis anymore, and I've been seeing a lot of people build it after the update, so I wanted to address it. It's better in so many ways to itemize critical damage items and hybrid damage versus pure AD for attack speed based heroes. This should be clear based on the history of AOV, which one champion in particular was broken and dominated for a very long time for this very reason. If you know who I'm talking about, write in the comment section and guess which hero I'm referring to. Now, the adjustments we make for the Abyssal Lane build is building Blitzblade first for the attack speed and having the option to go either Gilded Greaves or War Boots, because in this case you can rely on your support a bit more and you oftentimes aren't going first. We changed the Arcana to Reeve to supplement the lifesteal effect from Scorching Wind and giving us the much needed sustain in between fights. Then, I recommend going Slick Sting over Devil's Handshake because unfortunately, Lindis' ultimate hitting 4 times in quick succession does not stack on the Handshake. But you can still go Handshake if you're feeling super confident, as you are going to be hitting the same target many times, and you will receive more of an attack speed boost at the cost of resistance. For the 5th item, it's the same reasoning as before, but I recommend Fenrir's the most because your role is more following your teammates as the lane ADC, so maximizing damage is a bit more acceptable. The 4th and 5th items will determine how aggressive your playstyle is. If there are multiple AP sources, such as Kira and another mage, then you can go Uriel's Band instead of Fenrir's. The last build is especially made to counter a specific situation where you will find yourself in as soon as people become more familiar with Lindis. We'll get more into this later, but Lindis is hard countered by tanky regen heroes. But since Lindis is so high as a priority pick, a lot of people might try to first or second pick it in rank, then get counterpicked later on. In this scenario, it's important not to go Lindis Jungle, or you'll have a very bad time as your jungle gets helplessly invaded while you tickle the enemy tanks. You'll find that while you go ADC lane, you can still do a lot of damage using this build. There are no substitutions for Fafnir's and Blitzblade in that order. Then, if the enemy healing is out of control, you can also build Curse of Death 4th or 5th. If you decide to build Curse of Death, I recommend choosing to forego either the Muramasa or Blade of Eternity. In a lot of cases, especially if the players playing these regen champions aren't that good, you will find that just the tome on the mage is enough to deal with them. That was a lot, but let's continue and move on to the enchantments. As a reminder, if you have any questions about anything that I've said in this video or just about Lindis in general, feel free to ask me in the comments, as I am pretty active in responding to those. Now, unlike the build, enchantments are more based on personal preferences. For the jungle, I have 2 different pages you can consider running. The first one is based on Forest Wanderer, which provides key slows and HP boosts to Lindis if you perform more safety, and I recommend this one for beginners. The second one is based on Lucky Star, which maximizes damage output, and I recommend this one for more experienced Lindis players. You don't run alchemy here, as it's hard to proc your stacks in a time-efficient manner. and gold in the early game is worth more than gold in the late game. You can run Resurrect if you still want to, but you'll definitely notice a visible damage reduction of around 10% in the early game. For Lindis Lane, I recommend one page, which is Alchemy. Since you can proc the stacks quite easily, you use this to boost gold and complete your core items such as Blitzblade and Clave Sanctity as soon as possible. In my opinion, this is by far the best page for Lindis in the Abyssal Lane. Now, before we move on to the threats and synergies, I wanted to provide you with a graphic that I've created with Lindis' key strengths, weaknesses, and the playstyle of Lindis, along with ability summaries. This is the culmination of how Lindis' build, ability kit, and hero stats translate into the game. It's hard to memorize all of this information, so feel free to screenshot it and save it to your device or share it with your friends to reference it later and read it over while you're in queue for a match or just when you have free time to understand Lindis better. Let me know if you thought this graphic was helpful, and I'll be happy to make similar graphics for other hero guides. However, once again, please make sure to give me some credit if you do decide to post it somewhere else or share it with your friends. Now, let's move on to the next portion of the video, which is threats and synergies when it comes to Lindis. As I briefly mentioned before, the hard counter to Lindis would be heroes like Lubu and Tara, as their regen and tankiness alongside early game pressure makes it incredibly hard for Lindis to get items for her power spike, defending against invades, and to win teamfights. If you see multiple regen heroes in one team but have already picked Lindis in draft mode, go lane instead of jungle. Next, I wanted to also recognize the danger of mage assassins such as Zata or Zil. Your dash will not outrange theirs, but an interesting point is that Lindis is relatively good against Pain for a marksman, and you can use her dash just to avoid Pain's S1 range if you react fast enough. Lindis is also not that good against heroes that can just run at you like Florentino, Aoi, or Volcath. Lastly, be careful of Elsu if you play Lindis in the Abyssal Lane and hard CC champions like Lorien or Mina that make it difficult to walk up to enemies. When it comes to synergies, the most immediate answer would be the classic 2018 combo of Lindis and Teamy. Also, Lindis and Zip is very powerful too. A more reliable combo would be supports that can roam with you and help you peel but are also tanky. And the ideal ones would be Wonder Woman and Crest. Just imagine Lindis S1 in a bush and Wonder Woman instantly uses her lasso to start the fight. Also, Kha'Zix is a hero with ridiculous synergies with Lindis in terms of adding an additional speed boost and invisibility, making ganking lanes as a duo incredibly fast. The last synergies I wanted to mention are junglers with high mobility and sustained damage that can also burst, like Astrid, Scud, and Kilgroth for when you want to pick Lindis in the Abyssal Lane. You can easily roam with them, and since they aren't ridiculously tanky, not enough to overextend anyway, you can easily use them as discounted meat shields instead of junglers like Errol, who dive the backline with little regard of what's happening to his own team behind him. Finally, we're wrapping up this video by translating all of this knowledge into gameplay so you guys can actually see how it works. I wanted to give some quick analysis on how to use the abilities together. If you're playing Lindis Jungle, then when you go for a gank, you want to use the S1 to check the bushes or dark spots on the map on your path towards your gank. Also, use your S1 while fighting your enemies so they can't use the bush to cancel your vision and stop your autos. Then, use your S2 to delay enemies retreat towards their tower or a safety spot. Throw the traps ahead of them to where they want to go, thus slowing them down while you keep on spamming your auto attack. During ganks, use the ultimate to deal finishing blows or to close the distance as enemies are running away. Don't just use it in the very beginning, as you never know when you might need to reposition unexpectedly. Throughout this whole process, regularly use bushes to increase your movement speed and also get your enhanced auto attacks. Absolutely take boots with Lindis Lane, as even in dangerous situations, as long as you can use your boots to run towards a bush, you can chain bushes together and escape. To be clear, when I say boots, I mean the sprint talent. When it comes to Lindis in the early game, use your S2 traps to clear the minion wave and let enemies push, as almost all enemy ADCs will have superior damage to Lindis in the early game. Always stay in a bush, usually the bush closest to your tower. After you hit level 4, that's when you can find roam timings alongside your jungler, either following him to gank lanes or invade the enemy jungle. During teamfights, pay attention to your surroundings and play Lindis as you would an immobile ADC if you're fighting within the lane. Remember, it's okay to focus fire and overextended enemy support. Your damage comes in fast waves, with the first 2 seemingly not doing damage, only for about every third one to hit like bricks. You can see me apply these concepts in the highlight reel coming up. Guys, thank you so much for watching my content, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Recently, I got some sad news regarding my YouTube channel and it made me quite down, but the positive feedback from you guys really keeps me going and motivated to bring better content than the last time. I work really hard on these videos and I really want to bring you guys quality content, and I really hope you guys enjoy my videos as much as I enjoy making them. So thank you guys so much once again, and I'll see you guys in the next video.